Hello gamers and welcome back. I'm Rob, of course, or Warshek if you want to call me by my in-game name. And as we get closer to the next expansion, more and more cards will be released. At the moment, I think we have around 10-ish cards to cover, all of which seem pretty promising. A couple cards struck a nerve, especially the first card we're going to go over. So let's get right into it. This first card, there's some good stuff, but this card right here strikes a nerve, and I don't like the nerve it strikes. So we're looking at the 4 mana Paladin card, 2 attack, 4 HP, mech, magnetic, divine shield, and taunt. So if any of you have been playing since Goblin vs Gnomes, this is very similar to Annoyotron, hence the name Annoyo Module. All of they've done with this particular card was add the new title magnetic, multiply the mana times 2, multiply the attack times 2, and multiply the health times 2. It is legit the same exact card that they've printed before, but they multiplied everything by 2. So out of all of the cards that we're going to cover, I believe this evening, this is I'm going to be displeased with the most. Granted that there is literally not an original thought put into this card other than the fact that they printed a card before this that was original, and then they made this guy, which I guess since it's a Paladin only, you know, it has a little bit of leeway there because it can't be played in every deck like the original Annoyotron, but still, like, they could have done, I don't know. I just don't like reprints of the same exact card just multiplied by 2. It's just lazy. I don't want to pay for the same cards, and I'm sure you don't want to pay for the same cards. So with that, I have actually, and we need to let Blizzard know how we feel about this. So we've gone ahead. I've gone ahead, and let's go over to the Blizzard right here. Anybody want to explain this shit? Does anybody want to talk to me about why you can't print actual cards that you haven't already? Look at this. We've seen this. We've been through this. Just because you change the mana and the health just a little bit doesn't mean we don't know. Anybody in here want to explain anything to me? Anybody? No? Y'all gonna be a bunch of bitches and hide? Let's move back over. That's how I feel about that guy. Next card's pretty cool. It's a warrior card. 7 mana, 3/8 mech, of course. Magnetic, can't be targeted by hero powers or spells. Ooh, daddy. Okay. So obviously magnetic, huge part of this expansion. It's hard to say how good the magnetic will be, because first of all, we haven't played with it, and there's been nothing like, there's been, I guess, cards that you could conjoin together, like the Terror Fiend, I believe, in a Warlock, the 3 mana 3/3. If you put it beside minions, it'll suck into it, and that's been pretty good with Death Rattle cards. So if there's any Death Rattle cards that are printed now that have effects that your opponent doesn't like that you could trigger on your turn that you could take advantage of, very similarly to maybe the Nerubian egg, which was around, which summoned the 4/4. Your opponent wouldn't necessarily want to kill the egg, but you would kill it yourself and get the pop from it. Also, we had Sylvanas, you know, the Windrunner, so you'd line up some good stuff. You'd be able to take one of their best minions. So maybe we can get some good death rattles in here that makes these magnetics abilities. You're able to proc them on your turn, and you get some combos that way. Also, cards that have rush, which we'll get into in a second, that have magnetic, I think will be very promising as well. We've kind of seen cards like this before, guys, but they cost a little bit more. If we think of the old Sugoth the Slitherite, he was 9 mana, 5/9 taunt, and can't be targeted by hero powers or spells. Very similar to this guy. This guy obviously is missing out on some attack and health, but he's substantially cheaper in his mana cost. Instead of 9, he costs 7, which means you can weave in an additional card or a hero power. He has magnetic, but he doesn't have taunt. So as much as I want to praise this guy, without taunt, I don't think he's that great. Like, I don't think he's bad. I just don't think he's that great, because we've seen this before in another package. The card actually had taunt, and the Sugoth was only really played in, sometimes it was the Control Warrior, and it was only around a little bit, and not everybody played Sugoth in their Control Warrior. I did for a little bit, and then he got he didn't rotate out, but you know, we mixed in other things that happen to work better, because obviously you want to play a card in hero power in the Control Warrior, but that's besides the point. We'll have to see where this guy leads. Off the bat, not that impressed, but we'll see where it goes. Ooh, Ooh, some Druid stuff. A 2-mana 2/3 battle cry. If you control a treant, discover a spell. So obviously, discover a spell is, I think this is very powerful. Whenever you're able to it's basically, think about a free primordial glyph for a druid. It's pretty nice. You do, however, have to be able to control a treant, but we'll get to shortly. There's actually cards that are going to allow you to generate treants, and I don't think it'll be that hard. Especially with the mana cost of them being fairly small, you're able to play your treants, play this guy, buff them up. There's some combos there. It's not like this guy costs like 5 or 6 mana, and it's hard for you to bring them out in the early game because like having your treants live a couple turns because of their low stats in general. You know, you'd have to either play them later in the game where they're not as good because their stats aren't as high, or they cost more mana, like the guy that you would play if this was like 5 or 6. But because he's 2 and his stats are like a good 2/3, this card looks extremely solid to me. Like, so this seems like a substantially powerful card. Obviously, you'd only play him in a deck where you have treants in your druid deck, but given the amount of treant stuff we're going to see in the next like 2 cards, and it's only 10 cards of a 130 card set, you better believe we're going to see more. Plus, I believe there was a card in the expansion before this, the Witchwood, that let you, it was a 3 mana or 2 mana, you're able to generate 3 treants, and then you actually had to play them because they were 2 mana 2/2s. But still, it was played a little bit in the hand druid at the beginning of the expansion, not so much now. But this guy kind of just puts it all together, which I think this guy's really good. If treants, if the treant druid is a thing, this guy will be very, very good. Like, discovering a spell is very powerful, especially for 2 mana 2/3. I mean, we're just talking big daddy stuff right there. Moving on to the Druid Legendary already. I'll just call him Floop. He's a 4 mana 3/4 while in your hand. This is a 3/4 copy of the last minion you played. So basically what this guy is, he's a 4 mana 3/4 spell damage +5. Let's see if I could yeah, I mean, he just Malygos Druid, right? That's just your first instinct. Malygos costs, well, while in your hand, this is a 3/4 copy of the last minion you just played. So if you're playing this in the Quest Druid, obviously you get a free second Malygos. Or you just have to use the twig, right? So you play Malygos, you pop the twig. Or you play Malygos, do your 1 mana spell, pop twig, then go flop, and you get another one. And then you could Faceless Manipulator flop. Or the other Malygos. And that's, what are we talking, 9 mana? And then you have your 2 Moonfires, but you had 3 Malygoses out. So you're talking 2 Moonfires at 16 damage each for 32. Seems pretty good. Definitely would be seen in combo druid. I actually don't even think he's that bad of a card just to play in general. He's a 3/4 copy of whatever minion played in your hand. 3/4 for 4 isn't that bad. It's not great, but you get an additional copy of a card that normally you wouldn't be able to have in your deck. So you get to play like a 3rd copy of a minion, and the minions in your deck are probably pretty good. So whether it be like a Violet Teacher, obviously if you're a combo deck like the Malygos deck, you're running Malygos. Cards with just cool death rattles, that could be a thing too. We haven't seen all the druid cards yet, but definitely some cool stuff there. So I think this is a pretty good card in general as well. Good legendaries. It's good to see that they print non-shit ass legendaries. You know what I mean? Like, a legendary card should be good, whether it's good in a whole bunch of decks or just like a very specific deck. It's besides the point. As long as it sees play, and it's good, it doesn't even have to see play. As long as it's good in a particular deck. If the deck sucks, then it is what it is. But if the card is still good in a deck, but the deck itself isn't good, that's a different story. But, you know, good legendaries like this, when you open them up in a pack, you really just don't feel bad. You're like, oh, that was the worst one of the set. Given there always will be a worst, best and a worst, but, you know, at least it could be played. The next card we're going to look at is Landscaping. This is the 3 mana summon 2 2/2 Trents. So basically you get a 3 mana 4/4. It's a very solid card. It costs 3 mana. Synergizes with the card we just covered earlier. You know, the 2 mana 2/3. If you have a Trent, discover a spell. So very solid. I mean, you just can't complain with 3 mana 4/4. Stats are there. You summon 2 minions. Druid benefits very, very much off having multiple smaller minions because of cards like Savage Roar, Power of the Wild, branching paths through the buffs and whatnot. So we'll probably be seeing some form of like an aggressive Trend Druid. Instead of tokens, it'll just be called Trend Druid. or Token Trend Druid or something like that. But solid card, no doubt. Great arena card as well. Menacing Nimbus, 2-mana 2/2 elemental shaman card, battle cry, add a random elemental to your hand. I think it's pretty solid. I mean, as we've seen, any card that's basically for its stat line, 2-mana 2/2, 2-mana 3/2, stuff like that. I mean, even Stonehill Defender, discover a taunt minion, and that's a 3-mana 1/4. We've seen a very good Babbling Book was played for a ton of times. It's basically just a Babbling Book, but instead of spells, you get elementals. So Swashbuckler, this runs into line with all of the just on stat battle cry, make a random something or generate a random something and put it in your hand. And most of those cards aren't bad. They see play somewhere. You know, they rotate in and rotate out depending on how popular the deck that card happens to be in at the time. But most always cards like this do see play and they're not bad at all. So I'll go with what we've seen before. Cards like this are good. Do I like cards like this? Not really. You know, 2-mana 2/2 battle cry, add a random elemental. If it was discover an elemental, this card would be fucking crazy. So I mean, they couldn't do that because then it would be just crazy sauce. But at the same time, you know, whatever elemental they get, you're gonna be like, oh, it had to be that one. Are you kidding me? It's perfect in this situation. You know, it has to be some elemental, and it can't always be shitty ones. You know, they'll be shitty ones for, you know, lucky players, but you know, normal players like myself, and by normal I mean the worst possible RNG player on the face of the Hearthstone planet, we're gonna get absolutely steamrolled by cards like this. Moving on to another Druid card, we have the Mulch Muncher, 10-mana 8/8 mech. Oh gosh, we're moving into the big daddies now, boys. Rush costs 1 less for each friendly treant that died this game. So again, some more treant synergies. Rush, very interesting. Again, can synergize with the new Druid Legendary. The new Druid Legendary, whether they make, like, let's say a Druid minion, you know, that either battle cries, summon some treants, and you can combo with that, summon more. I see a lot of uses for that Druid Legendary. This is not a bad card. Obviously, it's going to be an auto include into any treant Druid, which isn't a bad thing. I like it. Like, I like that it has Rush. Like, Rush was a good mechanic for them to put in the game, because if it had Charge, it'd be fucking broken. Because it has Rush, you know, now we're talking about, like, when it comes out, it's meant to basically just make trades. And if it's not, you're still paying, most of the time, at least, I don't know, 4, 5 mana for it for the most part. Maybe a little less, but, you know, at least it's not attacking your face. And I don't know if I just lagged a ton there or what happened, so hopefully we didn't get hit with a lag bomb right when I was explaining that card, but if I did, I apologize. I basically just said that it's a good card. I'm glad it doesn't have Charge. Next card we're going to take a look at is going to be, a Legendary Mage card. Stargazer, Luna, 3-mana 2/4. After you play the rightmost card in your hand, draw a card. Okay, so originally when I read this card, it just means one time. After you play the most right card in your hand, you draw a card. But through watching the animated short, it looks like this is just period, end of story. When you play the most right card in your hand, you draw a card regardless, whenever. It's just, that's it. So if it's forever, it could backfire on you. Fatigue is a very real thing, especially in Control Mage. So this is either compensating for players maybe don't have, or a Lunith doesn't fit in their deck, which is the Legendary Mage weapon, which draws you 3 cards at the end of the turn. So you've got cards like this that, like, is kind of controlled draw, but still a lot of draw. At the same time, like, if you're a Control Mage and you're going into Fatigue and you need to play cards on the right side of your hand just to do it, and you don't want to draw cards, but, you know, let's say you have to polymorph something, but you don't technically want to draw, you're gonna get screwed. So my first look at this is good, but again, I don't know if it just means, like, once or, like, the whole game. I'm pretty sure it's the whole game. Again, I haven't played with these cards, so there's still a little bit of a question there, but if it's the whole game, it'll be funky. They haven't done something like this before. Why the right side of your hand? I guess for top deck purposes. It's like top deck draw, top deck draw, top deck draw, which I don't really like. I like the leftmost card, because then you're not just like top decking and then your opponent's like, you fucking kidding me? Top deck after top deck, you got what you needed and you keep drawing into the next top deck to draw into more AoE. But if that's the leftmost card, you know, they use the left card and then everything else has to be in their hand. And then if they top deck something they need, they can't play it like right away. They only can play cards that were previously in their hand, and they're not, you know, you're not getting wrecked by top decks after one after another. But, you know, they probably went through testing and figured the left side wasn't good. But in my opinion, maybe I like the left, because then I feel like I'm not getting top decked out of my mind. You're just like continuously drawing everything you need, but maybe that's just overanalyzing it. No offense, that was kind of a lame Mage Legendary. Like, we haven't seen a really badass Mage Legendary. I'm thinking of them. Archmage badass. Syndragosa, in my opinion, super fun. You know, she's cool, synergizes well with the Jaina hero power. It gives you cool legendary minions. Big Dragon, she's cool. Besides that, what have we had? I guess we've had what's his name, Ronan or something. He gave you 3 arcane missiles. I guess that was kind of cool, but you know, he didn't see a ton of play. We haven't had something really juicy in a while. Super Collider. This one got me shook, chat. By chat, I mean YouTube comments. 5 mana, 1/3. So, you know, this is a very small weapon. After you attack a minion, force it to attack one of its neighbors. So, if you don't get to pick the neighbor, kind of annoying. You know what I mean? Let's say you attack, like, they have 3 minions, you attack the middle one, and the middle one, like, they have a small minion on the one side and a bigger minion on the other, and you want the middle one to attack the big one so they, you know, kamikaze each other. And then it attacks the small one, and only the small one dies, and you just took a shit ton of damage because you just attacked a giant minion trying to kill the other giant minion. So, but it does work out if they only have 2 minions, or if the minion that you want to kill is side by side. So this is going to be a card, whether if you get to pick which one it attacks, it's really good. And if not, then your opponent can technically, I suppose, play around this card through minion positioning, which is kind of annoying because this is a high price to pay for this particular weapon. But it seems pretty good. It looks underwhelming, and I'm like, as underwhelming as this looks, this mechanic of it having your opponents attack each other, the only time you think of that is misdirection. And also with that, you still don't pick. But this one is kind of controlled because you can force it to attack one of its neighbors. So I suppose it is random. You don't get to pick. But what if it doesn't have I'm assuming if it doesn't have a neighbor, then it'll attack the only neighbor it has. It's not going to attack a neighbor that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? It's like it attacks the left of the card and there's nothing there, so it's like too bad to be like that. That'd be retarded. I mean, basically, the key is to kill 2 birds with 1 stone with this. You're killing 2 of your opponent's minions with 1. But if your opponent is semi-good at positioning, they can maybe get around this depending on cards that you have to obviously whittle down HP and then go from there. So I'll have to see about this card. This card is in the big maybe pile. Like I don't like it, but I know it's not bad. The reason I don't like it is because when I have a weapon, I want that weapon to kill things. Like if I have an Arcanine Reaper, a Gorehowl, you know, I'm gonna attack my weapon, I'm gonna kill a minion, you know what I mean? You're just gonna slash that motherfucker down. Like, that's the point of your weapon. You kill shit, you take it down. They ain't one fool, you just go. But this is like deceptively deceiving, because you're like killing, you're like pinching your opponent with like this needle of like poisonous, you know, you don't know what you're doing, and then your opponent's minion is confused, and then it attacks the other minions because it's so confused. I don't know. That's the way my mind works. I'm sorry, chat. By chat, I mean YouTube comments. Next card we're going to look at is very underwhelming. It literally has no text whatsoever. It's a 2 mana, 1/5 mech, upgradeable frame bot. So what this card is, we know a 1 mana, 1/3 is amazing. We've seen it in so many decks, and it's really good. Dire Mole. So basically, for 1 more mana, we're getting 2 more health and a mech tag on it. So it was 1 mana worth 2 HP and mech. And I think that this card is going to come into play with the Um, magnetic. I'm like sitting here, I know what it does, the minions come together, but I couldn't think of the word. Yeah, magnetic. So this might be a good like magnetic minion. Also, it's not that bad in arena. +5 health is a lot, so it's like this is a, for all of you paladin haters, this is like a silver hand recruit killing monster. I mean, look at this guy's left arm. I mean, this guy knows what's going on. So I don't think he's terribly awful. Could be used. He's probably like used by a lot of free-to-play players, to be honest, because he's not a bad 2-drop by any means, especially in what we're gonna see mech decks coming back, which have magnetic, so you can like magnetic a minion, you know, it has a shit ton of health. I mean, 5 health is a lot of health for 2 mana. So 5 mana, 5/5 mech magnetic war gear. I mean, they had to print cards like this, right? Just like kind of just like meh, because they don't print a lot of mechs. I'm sure they'll have like a mech card that randomly generates mechs. So if they only print good mech cards, then every good mech that gets generated is gonna be good. So they have to print some of these like, you know, so mechs back in, which makes sense. I don't mind them doing this. 5 mana, 5/5 magnetic. There's 5/5 that have existed before. It makes sense, but it's not like an exact, like, they're doing this to dilute the pool of like when like generating random mechs comes. But like the Annoyo thing, the first card we review, like legit, that's just a card they've already reprinted but just doubled its stats. And the card was annoying back then, so now it's gonna be super fucking annoying now. And that's like paladins are already fucking annoying, now they're gonna be even more annoying. Plus because it has, okay, no. Okay, Call to Arms is mana cost, not attack. Okay. Right? It's 1, 2, and 3. And it costs 5. It's not 1, 2, and 3 attack. I haven't seen Call to Arms, so I've lost my PTSD about it. But I'm mistaken on that. And then Annoyo, whatever, can be pulled from Call to Arms. Have fucking mercy. The next card we're gonna look at is gonna be super cool. Super sucky. This card fucking is horrible. It's probably like one of the worst legendaries ever, but it's cool. So he's Mr. Whizbang the Wonderful, 4 mana, 4/5. You start the game with one of Whizbang's wonderful decks. What does that mean? What the fuck is a Whizbang deck? What's a Whizzybone Wizzy deck? It's basically one of Hearthstone's 18 deck recipes. So each class has 2 of them. There's 9 classes, so there's 18 decks in total, and it randomly, when you have this guy in your deck, it'll randomly pick one of those 18, and that's the deck you'll have for that game. I mean, for players who only have this card, like, they're brand new to the game, right? And this is like one of the first legendaries they get. This card's amazing, because not only does it randomly pick a class for them, it gives you cards that you don't have, and the deck recipe is probably better than any like super beginner deck you have, right? So in that aspect, this card is good. And honestly, if I was Blizzard, I would give this card to every new player. I don't see a reason why every player shouldn't have this in their collection. It allows them to play. It basically not forces them, but you know, it gives them the ability to try all the classes and give them cards they don't already have, and make deck recipes on decks that you say, basically you put the deck recipe in your game and recommend players to play them, which means you are pushing players like, hey, if you like this class, then you'll like this deck, and this is one of the archetypes you should play, and this deck doesn't absolutely fucking suck. So if you give this to every player and say, hey, you know, in our good grace, here's a chance to, you know, play one of our deck recipes randomly, and you can't stand behind your deck recipes, that says something. But anyway, I think this card should be free to all players. So let me know when you think about that in the comment section below. But seriously though, why would you know what I mean? Like, it's just fair. It's a fair card to give free to play players. For, you know, serious players, this card absolutely is horrible. Like, this is like the least played legendary at higher ranks ever. There won't be a least played legend. Obviously, like, memeing around at legend with the deck recipes just for like YouTube content or just for like highlight clips, yeah, there'll be that, right? But like actually trying, this will probably be one of the least played legendaries. The last card we're gonna go over is a card that I looked at originally and it looked really bad, like really bad, and then I looked at it more and I thought about it and I was like, wow, this is actually really good. So 5 mana, 3/2 mech, magnetic, so obviously it does the combiney shit, divine shield, taunt, lifesteal, rush. You're like, Rob, why do you think this card is good? So when you have the magnetic is what brings it all together, and a lot of cards that we've gone over do have magnetic, but they don't have the other things that they don't have the divine shield, taunt, lifesteal, and rush. So basically what I view this as is a spell. So when you already have, let's say, a minion out, regardless of the size of the minion, doesn't matter, for 5 mana you're giving it 3+2 in stats, divine shield, taunt, lifesteal, and rush for 5 mana. Right now, one of the best buffs in the game, there's 2 of them, and I think of Blessing of King. It's a 4 mana, give your minion +4/+4. And there's Spike Ridge Steed, which is give your minion +2/+6 taunt, and it summons another steed after that. And those are really, really good. So this is basically equipping your guy for 5 mana. All of, not all of, but Alakir's abilities, like Lifesteal is so good, Divine Shield, Taunt, and like those are just all great. It can attack as soon as it comes out too. So like, let's say you have 10 mana, you can do a 5 into this, so you can basically make like an 8. Like if we go over the 5 mana 5/5 with magnetic, right? So we played that in this for 10 mana, we get an 8/7 with Divine Shield, Lifesteal, Rush, and Taunt. So you get to heal 8, you get to trade into a minion. Your minion is still alive because it had Divine Shield. They have to get through it with Taunt, and you healed for 8. That's so good. You know, obviously, if you already have a minion on the board, like let's say, you know, on curve, you have like, you know, a 3 or 4 drop out and you give it Lifesteal and Taunt, like you're shutting down aggro decks hard. So this guy's stats, they had to make it low because he's basically treat this guy as a spell. Like obviously, if you have to play this guy by himself, he's not as good at all. He's not still bad, but like just think of him as a spell, and this spell would be absolutely insane. So I think this card is really good. I think this card's like he might be overlooked a little bit at first, but when people start playing with this guy, they're gonna be like, oh man, this guy's pretty good. And that's just I'm going at. Normally I don't say cards are really, really good and they'll see a lot of play, but then, you know, think about this guy as a spell and you're just like, oh my goodness gracious, the things that you can do. And like, you know, your opponent thinks they're gonna kill you, and all of a sudden you whip out like a 5+ attack or 8+ attack minion that has lifesteal, it has rush, and they can trade into something without it dying or taking any damage. Plus it has taunt. It's like, hello, how you doing? Barrel, what you doing? So that's gonna wrap up all of the cards that we have to go over since these have been announced. Obviously, as more cards get announced and released, we'll continue to review them and take a look at them. So if I didn't get a card that, you know, came out in between now and when this video was posted, I apologize, but it'll be in the next review. If you have any extra additional things you can add to this, feel free to do that in the comment section below. I always enjoy reading what you guys have to say about the cards, or some stuff that I might have missed or not caught on to. So with that, as always, I'm Robert Warshak, and happy whatever the hell day it is.